it is no longer news that the 2027 general election is drawing closer and closer by the day, and we all know that the elections will cover the presidency, that's the president and the vice president, the whole House of Assembly, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. Is going to cover the state government at some point and the state House of Assembly. And we all know that not all of us understand how the system works, and that is why I started a series that explains how the system works, how the federal government works, how the state government works, how the local government works. And I started explaining the presidency, the executive cabinet, which are the president, the vice president, the ministers, and I've started explaining the roles of the ministers, and I have explained the roles of certain ministers, and I'm going to continue this in this episode and the subsequent episode, explain the roles of ministers and then other agencies at the federal level, at the state level, and the local government level. So join me in this episode as I explain further the roles of the ministers that we have in Nigeria. First off, we are going to be talking about the role of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We all know that presently we know what's happening in the country as regards South Africa. We have the xenophobia that is happening. South Africans are sending Nigerians back to Nigeria and other foreigners to their countries, and this can be resolved or should be looked into by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is because the first role of the Foreign Affairs is to conduct diplomatic relations, and this issue of xenophobia, for example, is a diplomatic issue which the Minister of Foreign Affairs should look into and have diplomatic discussions with the government of South Africa and Nigeria and see how that this can be resolved. Another duty of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is to represent Nigeria in international affairs. We all know that Nigeria as a country cannot stand alone. We need to relate with other countries, other continents to ensure that we get what we need, and we also have a very good relationship with them so that we can give them what we have and we can get from them what we need. It is the duty of this ministry, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to look into how that we have a very good international relations with other nations, either in Africa or from other continents. The next rule I have here is to protect the interest of Nigerians abroad. That means, for example, if you are watching this video from abroad, from let's say the UK, the US, Japan, Germany, whatever country you are in, even South Africa, or any country at all, it's the duty of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to ensure that your rights are kept intact, your rights are not being trampled upon, even in another country, to ensure that you are safe where you are. Whatever is going on there is being looked into. I once watched a video of Momoh, and she told the story of how that India once had a diplomatic relation with certain countries and ensure that whenever their citizens go to those countries, their rights are kept, they are well treated, such that the government of the country that the Indians are in gain from the Indians, and also the government of India gain from the Indians working or living in those countries. And that is what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is supposed to do, to ensure that as a Nigerian in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in India, in Pakistan, anywhere you are, because we all know that Nigerians are everywhere. There's a saying that in a society where there is no Nigerian, you should look out that there's something wrong in that country or that community, that there's no Nigerian there. There's a problem. There's a problem. Do you understand? So it's the duty of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to look into how that Nigerians are okay in whatever country that they are in. The present Minister for Foreign Affairs is Honorable Minister Yusuf Tuggar. The next ministry we are looking at is the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare. Health and Social Welfare. If we are having issues with our hospitals, how that the hospitals are not either they are not delivering their duties, their roles. If they are shortage in health practitioners, it is this ministry that looks into it. If our health system is failing, it is the duty of this ministry to look into it. I have listed another three roles of this ministry. The first on my list is to formulate health policy. We know, for example, the NHIS, which is a scheme to ensure that there is insurance for all Nigerians. It is the duty of this ministry to ensure that the policies that will ensure that Nigerians have good health care is being put in place. The next is to manage hospitals and public health services. If you do not have a primary health care center in your local government or in the immediate community where you are, then there is a problem. And who is supposed to look into the problem is not the president. It's not the president's duty primarily to look into that. He has given that rule or that duty to the Ministry of Health. So the Minister of Health is supposed to look into how that there are provisions for primary health care centers in every society across the country, and not just that the buildings are there, but there are doctors, there are nurses, there are healthcare practitioners there to attend to Nigerians, to citizens, to indigents across whatever community in Nigeria. And the next I have here is to lead disease prevention and vaccination. For example, just 6 years ago we had the COVID, and it was the duty of this ministry to ensure that proper vaccination is given to Nigerians against such diseases and viruses. We are presently hearing of things of Ebola rising. I just heard in a particular country they've recorded 3,000 plus people who have Ebola, and it is the duty of this ministry to ensure that this disease do not get into the country, and if it does, ensure that those who are affected in whatever part of Nigeria gets the adequate vaccination that is needed against such diseases. And the present minister for the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare is Prof. Ali Pate, CON. So the next ministry I'll be talking about is a very important ministry, which is the Ministry of Education. If you do not like the way the education in Nigeria is going, you should pay attention to this ministry. And I have also listed three different duties of this ministry. The first on my list is to develop education policy. Just recently we heard how that the cutoff mark for universities and polytechnics have been further reduced. It is the duty of the ministry to look into why these cutoff marks should be reduced. So policies around education should come from this ministry, how that our education should grow better and better. I'll give you an example, and I think I made mention of this in one of my videos. While I was in the university, one of my lecturers said that as an introduction to the course he was going to take us, I think it was American literature also, and he said specifically that what he was about to teach us, even the Americans no longer study it, because that syllabus has been outdated so much that even the Americans no longer study, because he had to go present papers and whatever in some American universities, and he found out that even the Americans no longer studied what he was about to teach us at the time. So this means that it's the duty of the Ministry of Education to ensure that there are policies and the schemes and for university, the schemes of work for secondary schools and the syllabuses for universities are renewed and updated over time. And this can only happen when we have developed and updated policies to ensure that the education system in Nigeria works and is delivering as it should. The next on my list is to monitor schools and institutions. If secondary schools are not functioning well, if universities and polytechnics are not functioning well, probably they are out or they have bad infrastructures. The classrooms and the lecture halls are not good enough for students to receive lectures. The lecturers are not being paid well. It is the duty of this ministry to ensure that the schools, the institutions, the universities, the polytechnics, the College of Educations are well catered for. The next year is to oversee curriculum and examinations. I already talked about that. To oversee curriculum and examinations. How are the students of secondary school and higher institution faring? Are they getting the adequate education that they should get? The curriculums, are they up to date? Are they meeting the standard? For example, WAEC, secondary schools in Nigeria, can their results be weighed with Ghana? Can it be weighed with Cameroon and other African countries that are also taking WAEC? So our curriculum should be updated from time to time, and it's the duty of the Ministry of Education to do this. And the Minister of Education is Honorable Minister Olatunji Alausa. The next ministry I'll be talking about is the Ministry of Police Affairs. I'm sure that a whole lot of us are not aware that there's a ministry called the Ministry of Police Affairs, because if we have such a ministry, why does it look like our police are not policing? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? They are not carrying out their duties well. The only thing we see them is to stand around bus stops having conversations with drivers. You know what I mean? So we are looking at the Ministry of Police Affairs, and I have three roles here and duties that are supposed to be carried out by the ministry. The first I have here is to supervise the police operations and reforms. If there's going to be any reform in the Nigerian police force, it is this ministry that is expected to look into it. How is it going to go about? How are we going to have reforms in the police sector, in the police force? Are they doing what they are supposed to do? Are they meeting the standard, general standard of policing worldwide? Are they carrying out their duties well? Is there something we also change in the police force, in the Nigerian police force? It is the duty of the Ministry of Police Affairs to look into that. The next is to improve community policing. Yes, we all know, it is clear, everyone knows that we do not have enough police in Nigeria. We can go days and weeks and you won't see a police in your community. The only time you will see a police is when you get to the express road. You understand? Or you move around the police station. That is where you will see police officers. You do not see them in action. You do not see them in your community ensuring that you are safe. Even when there is going to be an issue or an emergency and you need the police, they most times arrive late. So it is the duty of this ministry to ensure that the community policing is improved. So if we are not seeing any improvement in community policing, we are supposed to not just ask the president, Mr. President, as much as I'm not trying to make the president look good, it is not his primary duty to ensure that you are getting the community policing that you're supposed to get. It is the duty of this ministry to ensure that you receive adequate policing in your community so that you are going to be safe, your properties are also going to be safe, because the primary duty of the government is to ensure the safety of lives and what? Properties. The next is to manage police welfare and logistics. This is also very important because I already mentioned that when there are emergencies, let's say that there's a robbery in a particular location and the residents of that location call the police. Most times they arrive late, the robbery had taken place and the robbers had left before the police arrive. And most times it is not the fault of the police themselves, but because they lack adequate logistics to ensure that they move from whatever location they are at to your location. Also, it's the duty of the Ministry of Police Affairs to ensure that the welfare of the police is well looked into. I hope you understand that. Are they treated well? Are they paid well? Their allowances, are they well received? Their uniforms, the ammunitions they use in protecting you and I, are they getting it on time? So this is their role, to ensure that the welfare and logistics of police is well catered for. And the present minister is Senator Ibrahim Geidam. The next ministry I'll be talking about is the Ministry of State Women Affairs. Ministry of State Women Affairs. And I have also listed three duties of the Ministry of State Women Affairs. The first role I have here is to promote women empowerment programs. Of course, we need women to be a part of government. We need women to be a part of the private sector. We need women to be active in ensuring that our community moves from the level it is now to the next level. And for this to happen, we need women empowerment programs. It is the duty of this ministry to ensure that such programs are put in place. The next is to advocate for gender equality. Women well represented in all sectors. It is the duty of this ministry to look into it. And the third here is to address gender-based violence. Yes, gender-based violence is something that should be treated in our community, and it should be brought to the barest minimum. Gender-based violence is not good for our society and should be brought to the barest minimum. And the ministry to look into this is the Ministry of State Women Affairs. And the present minister of the Ministry of State Women Affairs is Honorable Imaan Sulaiman-Ibrahim. That is the Minister of State Women Affairs. The next ministry I'll be talking about is the Ministry of Steel Development. This one is very personal to me because the major steel company or infrastructure that we have in Nigeria is in my state, Kogi State, in Ajaokuta, and it has not been working for decades upon decades. So that is why this is very, very particular to me, and I need you to understand it also, which is the Ministry of Steel Development. It's such that we do not produce enough steel in Nigeria. Flat sheets. There's nothing you need that is technological that do not make use of flat sheets, and flat sheets are not produced in Nigeria. Don't let me go deep into that. Let me just stick to what we are here. I'll probably do another video on that. The first rule I have here is to revive the steel sector. To revive it, because we know that the steel sector in Nigeria is down to below 10%, even if they are even working in the first place. So it is the duty of the Ministry of Steel Development to ensure that this sector is revived, and it is working, it is employing Nigerians, because that is a very, very important sector in Nigeria. The next is to attract investment in steel production. We need to produce steel in Nigeria, because look around you, anything that has to do with iron, that has to do with steel, can be gotten from that place, from Ajaokuta and other mining locations and infrastructure that we have in Nigeria. The next is to oversee Ajaokuta and other steel plants. Yes, Ajaokuta is not the only steel plants we have in Nigeria. I think we have one in Audu, we have one I think in Benin and some other states in Nigeria. So we need to, it is the duty of this ministry to ensure that Ajaokuta and other steel plants are revived. So if we see that the steel industry in Nigeria, the steel sector in Nigeria is not functioning, we should look at the Ministry of Steel Development and ask questions. Why is it that Ajaokuta steel is not functioning? Why is it that the steel plants in Ondo and other states are not functioning? We need to ask questions, and we need answers to our questions. And in case you need to ask questions, the minister for this ministry is Honorable Shuaibu Audu. Yes, Honorable Shuaibu Audu is the minister for the Ministry of Steel Development. The next ministry I'll be talking about is the Ministry of State Regional Development. Ministry of State Regional Development. And the first duty I have here is to assist in implementing regional plans. So we all know that we have 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria, and all regions cannot develop equally because of the resources that are in several of these regions. So the way one region will develop is going to be based on the resources that they have, and and that's also there's a way that the federal government have come about to ensure that all of these resources are generated, maximized, and the revenues that come into it is spread equally across the country. And it's the duty of this ministry to ensure that the plans that have been put into several regions are being implemented. The next I have here is to support development projects in underserved areas of Nigeria. There is the duty of this ministry to look into several regions and look, oh, this region is underserved, probably because they do not have as much resources as some other regions. So it's the duty of this ministry to look at how can we ensure that this region is developed, as much as they do not have certain resources that would generate enough revenue for them to be developed. They have to take from some other regions to put in this region to ensure that they are also getting developed. So it won't, so the country will not look imbalanced. Do you understand? And that is the second duty I have here for the Ministry of State Regional Development. And the next year is to encourage balanced national development. I already said this, balanced national development. The way the southwest will develop is quite different from the way the northwest will develop, or the north central will develop, or the south will develop. So we have it is the duty of this ministry to ensure that there is no imbalance in the development of these several regions that we have in Nigeria. Yes, Honorable Ahmadu is the minister for the Ministry of State Regional Development. The next ministry I'll be talking about is the Ministry of Information. The duty of this ministry to ensure that government policies are properly disseminated. The government are doing a whole lot, and it's the duty of this ministry to ensure that the information about all of the policies that are happening, all of the things that the government are doing, are well communicated to Nigerians. The government cannot always, the president cannot always come out to talk about what's going on. That's why we have this ministry to ensure that Nigerians are receiving adequate information about what the government is doing, the policies that the government are putting in place to ensure that Nigeria is getting developed. The next is to promote national unity and values. Yes, to promote national unity and values. It is said that Nigeria is divided across several fronts, on religious matters, on regional matters, on ethnic matters, and several other fronts. Nigeria is divided even on a language basis. Even at that, there are several indigenous languages in Nigeria. So it is the duty of this ministry to ensure that there is national unity and values. So we should know what our national values are. We should know how to unite. So someone from the southwest is going to unite well with someone from the north, the northeast, or the northwest, or the north central, and someone from north central can easily unite with someone from the south. So if for this to happen, for us to have a national unity, it is the duty of the Ministry of Information to look into it. And the next is to counter misinformation and propaganda. To counter misinformation and propaganda. So if there's a misinformation in the country that is flying around in the country, it is the duty of the ministry to get the correct information and pass it out to the citizens of Nigeria across all media platforms, so that there will not be issues and unnecessary uprisings across the country because of misinformation. And the minister for the Ministry of Information and National Development is Honorable Muhammed Idris. The next ministry I'll be talking about is one of the most important ministries we have in Nigeria, which is the Ministry of Justice. Very, very important. The Ministry of Justice. And the first duty I have here is to provide legal advice to the government. Of course, there are times where the citizens of Nigeria take the governments to court on several issues. We have seen how that even citizens win the government in court, and uh, things are made, the courts make judgments against the government. So it is the duty of this ministry to provide legal advice on several matters to the government, so that the government will take the right legal decisions. It is the duty of the ministry also is also to oversee the prosecution of cases. Yeah, to oversee the prosecution of cases. Whenever case is brought before the government in court, it is the duty of this ministry to ensure that the prosecution of such cases takes place. The next is to draft legislation and policy documents. For example, now there is the issue around fake agencies, the fake agency that is presently going on. It is the duty of this uh, ministry to ensure that legislation and policy documents for all of the agencies and all of the things that the government should be doing should be adequately documented, so that when something of such comes up, for example, the fake agency that is presently in court that is being dragged, shouldn't be in place if the Ministry of Justice had done the legal documentations for such an agency. And the Minister for Justice is also the Attorney General of the Federation, who is Honorable Lateef Fagbemi. Honorable Minister Lateef Fagbemi is also the AGA, the Attorney General of the Federation. The next ministry, which is also the last ministry I'll be talking about on this episode, is the Ministry of Regional Development. The Ministry of, yes, I talked about the Ministry of State Regional Development. Now I'm talking about the Ministry of Regional Development. In the first episode where I talked about certain ministry, I also explained how that there's a difference between a particular ministry and then the Ministry of State for that particular ministry. They have different uh, duties, and I explained that in the previous video, so you can go check it. So the Ministry of Regional Development is to coordinate national regional development. If you notice in the previous one, I talked about is to assist in implementing. Do you understand? But it is the duty of this ministry, the Ministry of Regional Development, to coordinate the national regional development to ensure that all regions are getting developed and there's no region that is left behind. Then, so it is the duty of the Ministry of Regional Development to ensure that and to coordinate the national regional development policy. The next is to address regional disparities. To address regional disparities. So if there's going to be if there's an issue between one region and the other, it is the duty of this ministry to ensure that such issues are cleared and both regions are at peace. And the third and final duty I have here is to promote rural and urban integration. So all regions are supposed to integrate, so that we can have one country, which we have, but we are only going to be more unified if both the urban and the rural areas are well integrated amongst themselves. So if they are well integrated, there won't be the issue of one community against the other, one region against the other. So if a particular region is getting more developed and another region is getting less developed compared to other regions, there will be issues, and then one region will be rising over the other region, and there's going to be issues in the country. But it's the duty of this ministry to ensure that such do not happen and all regions are getting developed equally and faster. And the minister for the Ministry of Regional Development is Honorable Abubakar Momoh. Honorable Abubakar Momoh is the minister for the Ministry of Regional Development. I'm sure you've learned one or two things about the several ministries we've talked about, and we are talking about this ministry so that we can learn the duties of these ministries. If we do not know the duties of such ministries, we wouldn't know how to hold them responsible for the development of Nigeria generally. For example, we import a whole lot of things and we don't know that there's a ministry of steel development to look into the production of steel in Nigeria, such that if such is working in Nigeria, we might not need to import things that have to do with steel from other countries, and by this several jobs will be created in Nigeria. So we need to always hold our government responsible, and the only way we can hold them responsible is to know what they are actually supposed to do, and the only way we can know that is to know and understand how the ministries work. If you have learned something from this video, I request that you please comment what you've learned. Also share it to your friends and family so that they can learn what you've learned, and please do not forget to subscribe, because by this YouTube and the platform with which you are watching me, we will be able to share this video to other people so that they can also learn, and by this we are educating Nigerians at a time, and over time we will educate all Nigerians so that we can all understand how our government works and improve our society. Thanks for watching. Cheers.